I just want you to picture for a minute. Imagine you have a job, let's say as a nurse, and you're working your dream job, which is on a neonatal unit in a mid-level hospital in a small town in your country. And this is your dream job because you were an unwell infant, and you've always dreamed of being able to give back, to work with infants who are ill. And you're good at it, so good that you have more competency than the other nurses on your unit, even though you're young and inexperienced. So you're given a lot of responsibility. You buy a house while you're working, and you do overtime to be able to pay for that house, and because you care. But alas, the unit you're working on is not the best unit. In fact, it's failing. It has a sewage problem, so that feces is dripping from the ceiling. It has doctors who are not experienced, or at least not competent. And so rather than report this issue, they use diapers to cover the ceiling because they don't want to admit that their unit is failing, because if they do, then suddenly they're no longer the best doctors in the world, as they think they are in their heads. They have to face that they are the head doctors on a failing unit. Not only that, many of them don't know how to do basic things like insert nasogastric tubes. They shove needles into babies' stomachs to remove gas, but they do it on the wrong side and they damage the baby's livers. These are all mistakes that are happening on your unit, and you see them happening. And because you care and because you're competent, you start taking notes and you start explaining to the hospital management what's going on and what needs to be done to fix the issue. But alas, the doctors on your unit are not happy with you. And so they start to become obsessed with a certain idea. Not that the babies on the unit are dying because of sepsis or pneumonia or poor medical care, but because there's a serial killer on the unit, and that serial killer is you. And they become more and more obsessed with this idea, whether consciously or unconsciously, so that they can hide from the truth of what's actually happening and make it about you, protect themselves. And rather than going to the cops, which you would think one would do when they think that a nurse is murdering babies, they go to the hospital management because they don't want to be the whistleblowers in this case, because whistleblowers don't do well in hospital settings, and you are proof of that. So the management continually pushes them off, saying, but this nurse is such a good nurse. It's not possible. The things you're suggesting are just simply logistically impossible. But the doctors keep pushing. They develop a vendetta against you until finally the hospital management says, okay, we will investigate the situation, and they take you off the unit. They remove you from your dream job. They scare you. And they put you in an administrative role where you have to wait while an investigation that you're not quite sure is even about you. You don't know what's being said. All you know is that you're removed and that something's going on. No one gives you the full story. And then finally, after months, hospital management decides that you're innocent, that nothing has happened, that you've done nothing wrong. And they force these doctors to apologize to you, which they do, but they don't like it. So they continue for the next year to push and push and push and try and force the hospital management to go to the cops now. And the hospital management says, there's no reason to go to the cops. She's done nothing wrong. What you're suggesting is unreasonable. But because these doctors kept pushing and bullying and pushing and bullying and treating you like a monster, finally, hospital management says, okay, we will go to the police and have them investigate to remove any possibility of there being malfeasance in the deaths of these babies. So they do that, and the cops investigate. And the cops find there's nothing to investigate at all, that no one has done anything wrong. There's been no malfeasance, but the doctors aren't satisfied. So they push even more. They set up a private meeting with the cops. They meet with the cops, and in that one meeting, which was probably an hour or two long, the cops go from believing that nothing has happened to believing that you are guilty of murdering babies. Why? because these cops were enamored by the big almighty doctors who came to their office and made them feel like they were important and like they could do the job and they were the heroes and this will be a big case. So they took it. And they immediately went to the major newspaper in your country and said that there was a nurse who was being investigated for murdering infants on your ward. And then, after that newspaper article is published, a medical expert witness who only wants to make money, who's only ever done jobs as a medical expert because he wanted to make money, sees this article, contacts the National Crime Agency that assigns him to cases, tells them this is his kind of case. They get him an interview with the cops. He meets with the cops and says within 10 minutes he knew this was a case of murder, even though he had no evidence, no proof, nobody had ever seen you do anything, and nothing was done. And so he takes information from a research paper written by somebody in 1989 and creates a case around the dead babies that revolves around air embolism, insulin poisoning, all kinds of things that no one can really prove. And he points it straight at you, and he decides that you are a serial murderer too. And you're taken in by the cops to be questioned. You're let go. You're arrested to be questioned. You're let go. You're arrested to be questioned, let go. People are saying you're killing babies. You've done nothing wrong. You're terrified. At this point, you're not allowed to live in the home you bought. You're obviously not at the hospital anymore. You don't know what's going on. People are telling you you're a baby murderer. You're a serial murderer. You're a monster. And then you're arrested for good. And you spend the next 2 years in jail. You're taken to court. You experience the longest court case in the history of your country. You listen to ridiculous evidence that is obviously completely outrageous, a farce. And then you're found guilty by the jury, who can possibly understand the information that's being told to them anyway. Because nobody could. Not even doctors could. You're sentenced to 15 life sentences. Whole life sentences. 7 murders of babies, 7 attempted murders. Then after, the doctor who wrote the research paper that the case was based on sees that his paper was used, examines the situation and realizes that this crazy medical witness who had it out for women to begin with, who wanted to make money, which, by the way, he made at least 500,000 pounds in the process, comes forward and says, my research was misused. It's not true. It's not possible. And so he gathers 14 experts in neonatal care across the world. They do blind research on each case and come back with the fact that you never murdered babies, but here you are in prison for the rest of your life. The court system rejects your appeals, and you have one more chance, the CCRC, which will send your case back to the Court of Appeal if it's found that there is evidence that was not presented in court. That's silly. It doesn't matter if there was evidence that wasn't presented in court. The evidence that was presented in court has put you in prison for something you didn't do. Your face has been plastered all over newspapers saying that you're a monster, an angel of death, you're evil. Things you wrote are misused and misrepresented. Things you did are misunderstood. You are not guilty, and yet you're in prison for the rest of your life. Fortunately, this didn't happen to you. This didn't happen to me. We can't imagine it. But this did happen to Lucy Letby. And she's innocent. Lucy Letby, the neonatal nurse in Chester, England, is not guilty of murder. Put your energy toward her. Write letters to the CCRC. Send belief toward her. Help her be exonerated as quickly as possible. She's innocent. It's for her and it's for humanity. Release Lucy Letby.